The events described in this story are said to have actually happened in real life and have been passed down to the present day through the accounts of eyewitnesses. When I turned 16, my family and I left California and moved deep into the forests near the northern border of Washington state, not far from Canada. My parents had retired and finally built the home they had dreamed of for years. A spacious, isolated property surrounded for miles by pine trees, in a place as desolate as the eye could see. Our new house was truly stunning. It had 2 stories, a gym, a fully equipped bar, and a billiard room. The basement had been turned into an actual movie theater. A giant screen, surround sound system, plush seats. Everything was perfect, peaceful, quiet, and like a dream. At least, in the beginning. At the time, I was dating Emma, my girlfriend from senior year of high school. One night my parents went out to dinner in town. When I realized I'd have the house to myself, I invited Emma over. We planned to hang out and watch a movie. No one else was home. I secretly cracked open a beer. I wasn't old enough to drink yet, but no one was there to question me. Emma and I headed down to the basement, into the theater room, and put on the movie we'd chosen for the night, Gladiator. At first, everything was perfectly normal. We laughed, talked, and had fun. But as the movie went on, creeping toward midnight, I started feeling a tension I couldn't explain. Every nerve in my body was on edge. My heart was racing, and I had the unsettling sense that someone, or something, was watching us. The huge glass windows behind us looked out into the forest. The curtains were open, and outside was pitch black. I couldn't stop staring at it. I didn't want to let Emma notice. I didn't want to ruin her mood. So I stayed silent. As the film went on, we grew closer, but that gnawing sense of unease never left me. It was as if, out in the depths of the forest, a pair of unseen eyes were fixed on us. When the movie ended, I walked Emma upstairs and saw her off to her car. The house fell silent again, swallowed by the night. On my way back in, I remembered I'd left the lights on in the theater, the billiard room, and the bar. I decided to go down and turn them off. First, I switched off the theater lights. That's when my eyes drifted to the large window, and I froze. There was a man on the other side of the glass. His hair was wild, his clothes filthy. He looked homeless, but what rooted me to the spot was his face, that crazed grin stretching unnaturally wide, and his eyes locked on me with obsessive intensity. He was holding a knife. With the rusty tip, he tapped slowly against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. For a moment, I couldn't even tell if he was real. The only thing echoing in my head was the metallic rhythm of that sound. I took a silent step back and slipped into the billiard room. As I reached to turn off the lights there, I glanced out the sliding glass door. He was walking past the window, moving slowly toward the door, still smiling, never breaking eye contact. He stopped just outside the glass door. Only a few inches separated us. He didn't try to force the door open. He didn't speak. He just stood there, staring. And I stood there too, paralyzed, barely able to breathe. Quietly, I crept upstairs. Just then, my parents walked in. I turned to them and said, "I think I'm losing my mind." There was a man outside. He was looking at me, with a knife in his hand. My mom's face went pale instantly. My dad narrowed his eyes, said nothing, and headed straight for the gun cabinet. He grabbed his shotgun and rushed outside. Stunned, I asked my mom what was going on. Her voice shook as she said, "Someone's been roaming around here trying to break into houses. He's been spotted in the woods, and your description matches him exactly. We called the police. They came and searched but found nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, nothing but the cold, dark forest." But it didn't end there. The police searched around the house, swept through the forest with flashlights, scanned the window edges and dark corners, but found nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no signs of forced entry. Only silence and bottomless darkness, as if that man had never existed. The thought that it might all be in my head should have been comforting, but it wasn't. Those eyes, that grin, not blurry enough to be a dream, yet clear enough to be real. That night I tried to sleep in my room. It was on the second floor, directly above the theater room. The house was quiet, but a few hours later I heard it again. The faint tap of metal against glass. Tap, tap, tap. I lay there frozen, eyes wide open, ears straining toward the sound. My heart was pounding. Something inside me was screaming that he was down there again, but I couldn't bring myself to look. Maybe it's the wind, maybe the house creaking. I told myself that. But the next night, the same sound. The third night, same. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 in the morning and hear it again. Sometimes it lasted for hours, sometimes just a few seconds. But every night, something was there. Some nights I heard footsteps in the attic, climbing, crawling. I'd look at the windows, nothing. But the feeling inside me never changed. I was being watched. I knew it. Weeks passed like this. Then winter came. Snow blanketed the forest in silence. Out there, if someone walked among the trees, you could hear every step. And one night, my parents had to leave town. I was alone. Before leaving, my dad handed me a shotgun from the gun cabinet in the basement. "Just in case," he said. His eyes were steady, but beneath that steadiness, I sensed worry. We also had a big Rottweiler named Bruno. Normally, he was calm and affectionate, but when something was really wrong, he changed. He'd go quiet, stare, and then start barking, and those barks were like nothing else. That night, I went to bed as usual. The shotgun lay beside me. I made sure the curtains were tightly closed. Bruno curled up at my feet. After midnight, I heard it. The sound of footsteps in the snow outside the house. Heavy, deliberate, measured steps. Not light, not casual. As if someone was walking with purpose, careful and slow. Bruno suddenly lifted his head. His ears pricked. A few seconds later, a deep guttural growl rumbled in his throat. He turned toward the door, and then, all at once, exploded into furious barking. Non-stop, savage, snarling. I had seen him like this only once before. That first night, when he sensed the man standing outside the window. I didn't move. I just waited. Someone was out there. This was real. Then came the knock. Slow, heavy, mocking. As if to say, "I know you're in there." I didn't answer. I didn't make a sound. I spent the rest of the night lying there with the shotgun in my hands. Bruno stayed at my feet, eyes locked on the door, not blinking once. The next morning, I worked up the courage to go outside. The air was still cold, the snow pristine, but there was a trail around the house. Footprints, human footprints, circling the house, stopping at every window. He was looking for me. I followed the prints. They led away from the house, deep into the forest. I tracked them for about half a mile. But then, suddenly, the prints changed direction, zigzagging, looping in circles, as if someone was deliberately trying to confuse whoever followed. Something inside me whispered, "Don't go any farther." I listened. I turned back. But that night, the sound returned. Darkness had fallen. The forest seemed frozen in the silence of winter, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I was in bed. Bruno lay beside me, the shotgun within arm's reach. The curtains were tightly drawn, but there was something different about that night. The sound was clearer, the metallic tapping beneath the window. It wasn't faint anymore. It was hard, rhythmic, deliberate. This time, I was sure of it. Slowly, I got up. I grabbed the shotgun. I opened my door and stepped out onto the upstairs terrace. The terrace overlooked the backyard and was built right above the theater room. I reached for the floodlight switch and turned it on. The yard lit up like daytime. He was there. The same man. That deranged grin was still plastered across his face. His eyes weren't like normal eyes. Blank, fixed, staring at me as if he could read every thought in my head. He still held the same knife. His shoulders squared, motionless, just standing there, staring straight at me, unblinking. I raised the shotgun. My voice shook slightly, but I meant every word. "If you don't leave, I'll shoot you." He didn't react. He didn't step back, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. The grin stayed, a grotesque caricature of madness. Finally, I pulled the trigger. I fired a warning shot into the air. The sound ripped through the forest, echoing as birds scattered in a frenzy. And that's when I got my first response. The man jerked slightly, then slowly began to walk backward. But he never broke eye contact. Step by step, he retreated. Even as he slipped into the trees, that twisted grin never left his face. He cast one last look at me, and then he was gone. swallowed by the darkness. That's when I knew I had to do something. Something I should have done earlier. Let Bruno loose. I ran downstairs, threw open the sliding glass door and yelled, "Go!" Bruno shot forward like a bullet, a massive black shadow tearing into the forest, his teeth bared, fur bristling. I had never seen him so furious. He had an electronic collar, so he couldn't go too far. But deep down, something told me I was sending him away forever. What I unleashed wasn't just a dog. It was my fear, set free. And when Bruno vanished into the darkness, for the first time that night, I could finally breathe. Minutes passed in silence. No screams, no sounds, as if the man had melted into thin air. Or maybe Bruno had driven him off for good. I shut the door, turned off the lights, and went back upstairs with the shotgun in hand. I sat there all night, waiting for Bruno to return. And when morning came, he still hadn't. By morning, the snow was still there. The sun struggled to break through the trees. The air felt colder than the night before. But the silence inside me, that was far deeper. Bruno still hadn't come back. I stood up, slung the shotgun over my shoulder, put on my heavy coat, and started walking toward the woods. Bruno's tracks were still visible in the snow. He had bolted away from the house. I began to follow them. The snow crunched under my boots. The forest was quiet, but this time the silence felt threatening. About half a mile in, the tracks suddenly started to change. They looped into circles, veered off in random directions, just like the man had done. Zigzags, sharp turns, as if he tried to throw Bruno off, as if he wanted to confuse them both, as if the whole point was to lure us away. A fear I can't describe settled in my chest. I didn't go any farther. There was something out there, among those trees, and I didn't want to get any closer to it. I went back home. Bruno returned that night, quietly, moving slow. His coat was caked in mud, his tongue hanging out, but there wasn't a scratch on him. He looked at me, but his eyes were different, like he'd seen something he couldn't explain, something he would never speak of. But after that, nothing was ever the same. The man was never seen again. Not by the police, not by the neighbors, though word eventually got around. No one ever saw him. But after that night, some families near the forest started installing security cameras around their homes. Everyone seemed a little more on edge. Me? Every night I still listen for that window. I don't hear the tapping anymore. But sometimes, when I'm staring into the dark, I swear I see that grin again. That silhouette, flickering at the edge of my vision, like it's about to step out any second. And sometimes, in my dreams, I still hear the sound. Tap, 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 the blade against the glass. And that's when something deep inside me whispers the same thing every time. He's still out there, waiting.